This is my second time shooting the video because I forgot to press the record button the first time I did it. Fuck. Hey guys, so I really hope this video helps GCSE students that's about to go into sixth form choose the right sixth form for them in terms of grammar school or comprehensive school. I have experienced both sides of the coin. I went to a comprehensive school for GCSE and I went to a grammar school for sixth form. So my main motivation for making this video is that there are already quite a few videos on YouTube kind of explaining the difference between grammar schools and comprehensives, but most of them were made by head teachers of either comprehensives or grammar schools, meaning they have an inherent bias. Now, I know I am biased as well, but I'm probably going to be less biased than the head teacher of a certain school. The only one video that I kind of liked was made by some girl detailing her experience in comprehensives and grammar schools, but I felt like that wasn't really concise enough and I wanted to make some points that she didn't make. So here's my attempt at comparing grammar schools and comprehensives. To give a bit of context, I kind of struggled with the layout of this video and how I wanted to set this video out. So what I've decided is to kind of explain the major difference between grammar schools and comprehensives at first, and then get into the advantages and disadvantages, which will be listed onto this board as we progress, and then kind of in the conclusion give my recommendation for what you should do. Let's begin by stating the biggest difference between grammar schools and comprehensives. Both being public schools, grammar schools tend to have a selection process. What I mean by that is that most commonly with like the 11 plus or like GCSE grade requirements, you need to meet a certain threshold to be able to attend that school. Whereas comprehensives are known as unselective schools, meaning that anyone can get in without any kind of previous qualifications. Generally speaking, because I know some comprehensive schools do need like I think SAT scores or whatever, or X amount of GCSE grades to get into their sixth form, but they're generally way more lenient with that kind of thing compared to a grammar school. So now I'm going to evaluate my comprehensive school experience. To start with, I want to talk about the advantages and what I liked about going to my comprehensive school. Number one, teachers were a lot nicer. What I mean by that is they kind of joke around with you a little bit more, and they treat you more as an individual rather than someone they just have to help to get a good grade. Another advantage is that in terms of support that teachers offer you, they're way more personal with it. What I mean by that is they are more willing to sit down with you one-on-one to explain certain concepts that you didn't understand, and they are more likely to take the time to kind of help you and go through the homework with you or whatever if you don't understand something. This doesn't occur as much in grammar schools. There's not many teachers are willing to do that for you. From my experience, I was told more to, just like, oh, go home and figure it out for yourself. Which in some sense does benefit the student more in the long run, as it doesn't really help the student in the long run to be spoon-fed information. But that was one of the things I consider as an advantage, especially for GCSE students, where they kind of don't know how to learn for themselves yet. And lastly, one thing I really liked about going to a comprehensive is that the teachers were a lot more lenient. What I mean by that is if you're an above average student and you actually put in some effort into your work, the teachers will be way more likely to turn a blind eye to many things compared to my grammar school teachers. Now let's talk about the disadvantages. One of the biggest disadvantages that I felt in terms of my time there was that I felt almost handicapped in terms of my academic achievements. And in my opinion, the biggest cause of that was that the teachers there simply didn't have the expertise or the knowledge to teach you and deliver the A-star material well. This was also one of the biggest reasons I chose to go to a grammar school, as if my thought process was at the time, if teachers didn't know how to teach GCSE to the full extent and didn't know the curriculum that well, imagine what would happen at A-levels, where the course content is much harder and the curriculum is much deeper in terms of subject specifics. Another disadvantage that I found was that there were a lot more unserious students at comprehensives in terms of they just didn't really take their education seriously, which I felt was a massive disadvantage. And the final disadvantage that I would like to talk about for comprehensive schools is that academics, in my opinion, at least from my experience, weren't really rewarded. They were more focused on kind of behavior and spent a lot more time correcting uniform. My old school in particular, focused on rewarding people for good behavior and improvements and like progress, rather than the students that put in consistent effort and whose behavior was always like very much acceptable. I felt that this was like a slap in the face for many students that actually put in effort, because it kind of assumes that they'll put in effort regardless, and we should be focusing and giving more time to those that are misbehaving and not really striving for more, if that makes sense. Now, I'm going to make some more neutral points that can be kind of interpreted both ways. Let's begin by talking about the whole unselective school thing. Being an unselective school, it means it allowed kids from with all ranges of abilities to get into their programs. Personally, I didn't like this, and it's because, as harsh as it seems, mixing the smarter kids with the dumber kids limited the smart kids, because especially in class, the concepts had to be explained to the dumber kids over and over again before the class could progress. This really handicapped the progress of the smarter kids. But I do understand why this is actually done, and it's done because there have been many studies that show mixing students with all abilities will bring up the class average, but it does have detrimental effects to the upper quintile of the students. Now, although I don't like it personally, because I felt handicapped myself, it can be argued both ways, because it's more of an argument of fairness versus efficiency. As it is obviously more fair to put the smarter kids with smarter kids, as it is unfair to limit them, but it's definitely more efficient to mix everyone and bring up the average. Another neutral point that can kind of be argued both ways is that there is less stress. So as a person that worked better under pressure, I wasn't really self-driven, especially during GCSEs, as I didn't really see the significance of it at the time. So I would have worked a lot better if there was a bit more pressure added onto me. However, this can obviously be argued both ways, as if you're not a person that likes to work under pressure, it is completely fine, and it's not really something that's a bad quality in my opinion, because if you can work well under low pressure, it shows that you're more self-driven. And another neutral point that I really liked was that the relationship with teachers is a lot more less professional. And what I mean by that is you can kind of joke around with them a bit more. I really like this because it kind of humanized the teachers more, and you were able to relate to them as a person rather than as like some authoritative figure that just kind of told you knowledge and you just kind of learn from them. However, obviously this can be argued both ways, as in terms of the long run, I believe it's probably more beneficial to have a more professional relationship with your teachers, as it kind of prepares you for the work environment more. Right, now let's talk about the grammar schools. For these, the advantages and disadvantages are basically like the mirror image of the advantages of disadvantages to comprehensives, so I'm going to go over these more briefly. Number one, academics are really rewarded in grammar schools, and there's less focus on behavior, because one of the benefits about going to a grammar school is that everyone's there wants to achieve, at least in terms of academics, generally speaking, so behavior is something that requires a lot less enforcement. Another advantage that I want to discuss is that the general demographic of grammar schools is middle-class people, meaning that the students there are from more wealthy backgrounds. From my observations, this tend to mean that they had higher aspirations in general and kind of are more aware of what opportunities are available to them and actually how to reach their goals. Now, saying that surrounding yourself with middle-class people will benefit you more than surrounding yourself with generally working-class people may sound really pretentious, but here's actually how it will benefit you. It will benefit you because by the law of average, it states that you will end up somewhere on their level in most cases. This obviously means you are more likely to have a better financial future, and you are generally be able to network better and form better and more useful connections for your future. And lastly, another big advantage is that the teachers are more qualified to teach their course, especially when it comes to sixth form. What I mean by that is their knowledge base is just far greater compared to my average comprehensive school teacher. However, what I noticed is that the grammar school teachers are less capable in terms of delivering the course content in a more concise and easy to understand manner. What I mean by that is, for example, literally, my maths teacher was so smart that he was bad at explaining basic concepts. Because something to him that seems so intuitive was actually like very difficult to understand for me. So I guess maybe it can be argued both ways, but I definitely preferred having more knowledgeable teachers teach at sixth form. Maybe this wasn't as necessary for GCSE. I don't know. And that's it for the advantages. I want to now talk about the disadvantages of going to a grammar school. So let's begin by talking about the kind of discrimination in grammar schools. In my school, at least, because academics were pushed so drastically, there was some divide based on academic achievement, which I didn't really like, but it kind of makes sense of why it happens. It's because the school pushes academics way too hard that it's only as a result of that. Another disadvantage is that going to a grammar school meant that I had a lot less time, as there was a lot more homework and revision that I had to do, because there were a lot more kind of tests and assessments that happened more frequently. This meant that I wasn't able to pursue some of my hobbies, and as I had to focus on studying. Another disadvantage I want to talk about is that teachers aren't really keen to give you one-on-one help, and it's because they tend to generally tell you to go seek the answer yourself, which I really struggled with because I was so used to having like personal one-on-one explanations given to me. It was kind of unusual for me to go out of my own way to look for the answers myself, and I found that to be quite a struggle, especially in the first half of year 12. But eventually I got used to it, and it's something that I'm very used to now. And finally, for the last disadvantage is something that I didn't talk about in the comprehensive disadvantages, and it's that there's a bigger drug problem in grammar schools, in my opinion. And this kind of extends to private schools as well. Now, what I mean by that is not that there are more people doing drugs in grammar schools, but it's that because they're from generally a middle-class background, the students there get more money from their parents to spend on whatever they like, and they're able to afford more Class A drugs. So obviously, if you really hate drugs and you don't want to surround yourself with people that are like that, it's very possible. There are many people that don't do drugs in grammar schools. In fact, the majority don't. It's just that out of the people that do, they tend to indulge in higher and more expensive drugs. Now, onto the neutral points. The neutral points are literally the comprehensive neutral points, but in reverse. So obviously, being a selective school means that they don't allow all ranges of ability to get in. It's a more narrowed range, and you can make the opposite argument for the comprehensive one. There's obviously more stress, and the relationship with teachers are more professional. And that concludes my evaluation of my time at my comprehensive school and my grammar school. So, now onto my opinion of what you should do for sixth form. My personal opinion is that, and I tell this to all the GCSE students that I used to tutor, and it's that if you get the grades for a grammar school, go to a grammar school. It's as simple as that, because going to a grammar school gives you a better chance at securing a better financial future, and you're more likely to end up in the middle class if you go to a grammar school. And if you're someone that aspires to go to like a Russell Group university, you should definitely consider grammar schools because they have better personal statement advice, and they are better connected to the unis themselves in terms of like a relationship between with the universities. I say this because you'll meet people from more privileged backgrounds, and this will benefit you because the law of average states that you are more likely to end up on a similar level to those that you surround yourself with. And from my experience, it has proven true so far. Now, the biggest mistake, in my opinion, that you can make when deciding what school or like sixth form or college to choose is if you factor in your current friendships. I know it's hard, and you do think... I know that that might be a very hard decision to make, and you might have to cut ties with a few people, but trust me, it'll work out in the long run, because the people that you'll meet... Because the people that you know right now, and those that you think are your friends, most of them you won't know in 5 years' time. As harsh as it seems, you just have to completely ignore what they say and like focus on what you want to do. Because it's kind of getting to that stage in life where you're basically forced to get your shit together or suffer the consequences 10 times worse down the line. Now, for a bit of positivity, if you want to go to a comprehensive or didn't get into a grammar school, what does that really mean? Well, it doesn't really mean too much in terms of the bigger picture. However, it does mean that if you want to achieve the same grades as you initially planned, in a comprehensive it is much harder. The teachers aren't as good, and your peers aren't able to help you as much, so you're going to have to put in a lot more effort. I want to conclude this video by saying that grammar schools definitely aren't for everyone, which is why my advice is that if you get in, you should go. But there are many friends of mine that stayed in comprehensives, but did get the grades for a grammar school, just chose not to go, that I feel would have done extremely well in a grammar school environment. I want to end this video by talking a little bit about fairness, and is the system of selective and non-selective schools actually fair? My answer to that is definitely not. As many people aren't aware of the differences between the two, and their parents don't understand the differences either and can't help them make the informed decision. Despite that being my answer, my opinion is that it really doesn't matter, because the world will never be fair, and it is up to you to take advantage of the opportunities given to you, which is why I suggest to everyone that can get into a grammar school to go. Hey guys, if you found that video insightful, please leave a like and remember to subscribe for more videos coming next week. Next week I want to make a video about money. I know, right? It's actually relevant to the channel, but it's going to be about whether Bitcoin and like cryptocurrency investments in general are suitable for students.